Rhode Island State Board of Elections will be called to order. It is Wednesday, December 11th. Madam Secretary, would you please call the roll?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Chairwoman Johnson,
Present.
Vice Chair Dewar,
Present.
Member Bettencourt,
Here.
Member Carter, Member Giacomo, Member Medeiros, Member Scholl, Executive Director Miguel Nunez,
Present.
Legal Counsel Raymond Tucker.
Present.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. Agenda item number 1, the board may discuss and vote to approve the minutes of the meeting of November 14th, 2024. Is this on? Can you
Second.
Moved and seconded, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. Agenda item number 2, the board may discuss and vote to approve the minutes of the meeting of November 22nd, 2024. Do I have a motion?
Motion.
Moved and seconded, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. Agenda item number 3, the board may the board may discuss and vote to approve the board meeting calendar for 2025. Director?
Honorable members of the board, before you today is a proposed board meeting calendar for 2025. Generally speaking, as you know, each board member is scheduled on the first Tuesday after the first Monday of each month. I think we have it on screen. Johanna, correct? And that is typically the only day that the board may conduct special elections under state law. And I have a few notes of interest for the board members regarding the calendar that I would like to point out for you today. The January 14th meeting is not scheduled on the first day, Tuesday after the first Monday, because we are not conducting a special election that day. And the staff wanted more time to allow after the holidays to prepare items for that agenda, which will likely include staff recommended legislation and legislation from the Secretary of State's office, which we are still meeting with them on as well. Otherwise, the meeting would be scheduled on January 7th if the board prefers. Secondly, we have also identified June 3rd and October 7th as potential Jewish holidays that could impact the conduct of the election. In that case, the special election would need to be held the next day on the Wednesday, in which case we would need to reschedule the meeting for the next day as well. In either case, the board can choose to modify the calendar now, or we could wait until that time when we know if a special election will occur, necessitating an amendment to the schedule to move the meeting to the next day. So it would be on the same day as when the special election was to be held. And I would just ask, what is the pleasure of the board in that matter?
Just waiting to see if something happens.
I'll defer to my fellow board members.
Yep.
To me, it's either way, doing it now or changing it then makes a difference.
Yeah, usually in the past, we've made some changes, so this will be a tentative schedule, so it looks good.
Okay. Then I present the schedule for you to approve for 2025.
I'll move to approve the schedule as proposed.
I'll second.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Commissioner, do you have a
I
question?
just had a question that not somewhat related. So you mentioned in the first one, the goal would be to talk about legislation. So I'm wondering if we could have a subcommittee meeting before that, like the hour before, whatever it is. Just, I know when the session ended, part of what we talked about was to get some information about the bills that passed, either those that we had supported or those that we hadn't, and how they impact some of our work. So I'm wondering if some of that would be possible.
I'm not sure. I believe the subcommittee, unless it's a standing committee, if it has to be formed every year, because if then we would
I
have.
don't think we dissolved the committee. but
No,
that's
we
just-
put
I
it
don't-
on
that's my
pause. Yeah.
recollection.
Okay, so we
never
can do
ended.
that.
Yeah.
There was no dissolution of
No.
it?
I think for that reason, yeah, I
Mhm.
think for that
we needed
reason
to-
that
yeah.
we did, but we should, can we just?
The
check
only
that?
thing I would have to do, or somebody would have to do, is just check to see what the
Mhm.
motion was. Was the motion to convene a subcommittee with respect to the 2024 legislative
Oh.
term? I don't know if
The original.
if the original
Yeah.
motion was
The year was
limited to a
specified.
specific year, in the absence of that, you'd be set. You could just keep it
Yeah.
going.
All right, we can check that, because
Yeah.
I remember specifically for the purpose of us wanting to not only look at this legislation like in big chunks once a year, we had wanted to keep it year round, but we can check that.
No,
I think our chairwoman on the subcommittee forced us to keep it in effect.
I did.
Probably, most likely.
did.
I have
Now,
that.
typically, we would
Have
present
that
the
as well.
staff's legislation to the board directly, and the Secretary of State has been allowed to do so as well through through their liaison. And then any other bills that were submitted on behalf of other entities were something that would be gone through by the subcommittee. If that's the practice we want to keep with, then we can schedule a subcommittee meeting as well if we can. If we can't, if that subcommittee is not active still, then we would have to put that on the agenda for the 14th
Perfect.
to activate it and select the members.
That would be great.
Sounds great.
Thank you.
Perfect. Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the board meeting calendar for 2025. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. Agenda item number 4, the board may discuss and vote to remove the No Labels Party Rhode Island as a legally recognized political party in the state of Rhode Island under Title 17 of the general laws. I go in
I will.
council or
Yep.
direct?
Yeah.
Honorable members of the board, as you know, in June of 2023, the No Labels Rhode Island Party submitted their requests to the Board of Elections for petitions for political party recognition, which was approved by the board. They collected signatures and they submitted the petitions to the local boards of canvassers in December of 2023. And in March of 2024, based on the No Labels Party having collected the required number of signatures, the board voted to certify the No Labels Rhode Island Party as an officially recognized political party. Party recognition is covered under Rhode Island General Law 17-1-2, Section 9, which requires any political organization seeking status as an officially recognized party to either have a candidate obtain 5% of the total votes cast in a presidential or gubernatorial election, or gather signatures equaling 5% of the total votes cast in those elections. However, in the November 5th general election, the No Labels Rhode Island Party did not field a presidential candidate. Therefore, the party did not obtain the requisite 5% of total votes cast for president as required under Rhode Island General Law 17-1-2, Section 9. In this case, the No Labels Rhode Island Party would have needed to receive 25,669 of the 513,386 votes cast for president on November 5th to retain their formal recognition. Therefore, the staff requests that the No Labels Rhode Island Party be decertified as an officially recognized party, so the staff may commence the process of removing the party from official documents such as the voter registration form and on our website. The Secretary of State will also commence work to have the party removed from the central voter registration system and the online voter registration portal. We will also work with the Department of Motor Vehicles to have any references to the No Label Party removed from the DMV website that are currently up there, as well as within DMV branches and all of the AAA branches. The 1,528 voters who are currently registered under the No Labels Rhode Island Party will be changed to unaffiliated status, and they will be mailed a notice. The No Labels Rhode Island Party has already dissolved their account with our campaign finance division. We did reach out to them multiple times by email and by telephone prior to this meeting to inform them of this meeting. And the chair, Gary Sass, indicated he would be out of town, so he would not be able to attend. And we did not get any indication from any of the other individuals involved with the No Labels Party that they would be attending either.
Thanks,
And
Director.
Miguel, just for the record, there was no candidate for governor from this party, and therefore we didn't do the calculation.
No candidate for,
5%, right.
correct.
Any questions for Miguel from the board?
And Miguel, I would take it that No Labels Party has not filed any objections to this action that the board's going to take today.
No, and if you recall, several months ago, they attempted to remove the official certification, but we had to wait until the November 5th general
Yeah,
election.
I remember they appeared before here and said they were going to dissolve.
Correct.
So this would just be the official dissolution of the party
Correct.
in Rhode
yes.
Island.
Thanks. Thanks, David. Anything else?
Nope.
Okay. Do we have a motion?
Second.
Motion to remove the No Labels Party Rhode Island as a legally recognized political party, moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. And are we moving to 5 or past 5? Do we have Pawtucket
Yep,
here?
yep.
Okay.
Ken is here, correct?
Okay.
So we can move on to number 5.
Great. Agenda item number 5, the board will hear from the Pawtucket Board of Canvassers regarding the procedure of transmission of election results and delivery of tabulation memory devices to the board for the November 5th, 2024 election. Miguel?
Thank you, members of the board. I'd just like to summarize the incidents that what occurred on November 5th and obviously the reason why the board on November 22nd requested that Ken McGill, the clerk from the Pawtucket Board of Canvassers, appear at a board meeting, and he is present at the meeting here today. As you know, on the night of November 5th, our website did not display any early voting results for Pawtucket. And there were several factors involved with this, which I'll go over briefly. Now, we had assigned 3 DS200s to the Pawtucket early voting site, which was held at the Visitor Center a short distance from City Hall. Only 2 of the machines, Machine A and Machine B, were actually used during early voting, which, as you know, early voting ended at 4 o'clock the day before Election Day. So none of these machines were in use on Election Day. The third DS200 unit, which was Machine C, was reserved as a backup during early voting but was never used. On November 5th, neither DS200A or DS200B transmitted their results to the Board of Elections at the close of the polls. The staff contacted Ken McGill, the clerk of the Board of Canvassers, and Ken brought us 2 encrypted USB drives prior to 10 p.m. that evening. Unfortunately, when the staff attempted to load the drives into our systems, it was realized that they were, in fact, the backup USB drives, and they did not contain any data on them. These backup drives do not store data until just before the results are transmitted. And as I just mentioned, the results were not transmitted from those DS200 early voting machines that evening. When the staff attempted to contact Ken again via his cell phone, we could not reach him. When we tried to contact members of the Board of Canvassers, the emergency contact information that we were provided with for them was actually the phone number for the Board of Canvassers office, which was closed at that time. The staff contacted Ken the following morning, and he immediately delivered all of the USB drives for Pawtucket, including the primary early voting drives. Now, the staff has been working for a few weeks with Sonia Grace, the former clerk for the city of Central Falls, to investigate what occurred on that evening and that day. And Sonia has been assisting the Board of Canvassers since October. Upon further investigation, it was determined that a series of events transpired that day, which may have been contributing factors to Pawtucket not transmitting that evening. First, the Board of Elections technician assigned to Pawtucket needed to replace a DS200 in the Slater Park polling place, but he did not have a spare machine. This technician has worked for the Board of Elections in 7 elections and is well experienced. He was instructed by our call center to retrieve a machine from the early voting site at the Visitor Center, which was also serving that day as the president, vice president, same day registration site, and was using a completely different DS200. When the technician arrived at the Visitor Center, he was told by the poll workers that there was only 2 DS200s, the A and B machines. Unbeknownst to them, the spare C machine was locked in a closet. Upon calling the call center, the tech was instructed to use either the A or B machine, which were not in use on election day and did not contain any ballots. And just to explain to the board, as you know, the DS200 is comprised of several components. The top unit is basically the computer, the tabulator. That is itself enclosed in its own clamshell case which can be removed from the top of the ballot box after it's unlocked, and it actually has wheels on it, and it can be rolled to another polling place. So it's actually something that's very mobile. And what remains behind is simply the ballot box. And the ballot box has two components, both of which are locked. It has the emergency voting compartment in case the machine is down. They can open that emergency compartment. And then it also has the main ballot compartment, which can fit about 2,000 ballots, which is also locked and sealed below. In this case, both of these DS200s contain no ballots, as the early voting had ended the day prior. The technician attempted to use machine A, but he stated that he noticed one of the metal guide flaps on the machine was bent, and he stated he did not want to take the chance that the machine would not function or would jam once he installed it in Slater Park. He then removed this DS200B from the top of its ballot box. He also removed the USB drive, but unfortunately, he removed the backup drive and gave it to the poll workers at the same day present location and instructed them to deliver it to City Hall at the close of the polls. When he arrived at Slater Park, he replaced the non-functioning DS200 with the unit he brought from the early voting site. When he attempted to insert the USB drive from the non-functioning Slater Park DS200 into that replacement unit, he realized that the primary drive from early voting was still in that unit. He removed the drive and handed it to the clerk at Slater Park with instructions to deliver it to City Hall with the USB drive from their own DS200 at the close of the polls. At the close of the polls, both early voting machines were brought by the Pawtucket Public Works Department to the Board of Canvassers office, and were unable to transmit because, first of all, the DS200A was partially disassembled by the tech. Once he realized he could not use it, he removed DS200B, which he did transfer to the Slater Park polling place to replace that non-functioning unit there. The third DS200C was capable of transmitting results for both sticks, and that's part of our procedures, but it was not used as it did remain at the visitor center early voting site. As I said, it was locked in a closet. The clerk from Slater Park did deliver the main early voting stick to City Hall as instructed by our technician. However, apparently was not noticed with the returns. The other USB drive, the main one, was still locked within the DS200A. Both of these sticks, as I mentioned, were delivered to the Board of Elections the following morning, and the results were produced on our website. And I'm happy to answer any questions, and I think Ken McGill is here as well to answer any questions that you might have.
Any questions from the board?
Was that?
I have a couple.
Yep.
So just walk me through the process as to why we weren't able to reach anybody, and that's whether the clerk can do it or the director can do it. And I'd appreciate any comments from legal counsel on what our regulations require. But I'm curious as to why we wouldn't be able to reach anyone from the city of Pawtucket on that evening.
So we share an emergency contact list database with the Secretary of State's office that we ask the local boards of canvassers to enter in emergency contact information for clerks, Board of Canvassers, precisely for this reason, because on election night, there's been many times over the years where we've had to actually call the clerk on their cell phone, call the chair of the board, have them get in contact with the clerk. Sometimes we've sent the police to the clerk's house to find them in past years. And to avoid as much of that as possible, we want to have all the contact information that we could have. When we looked up the contact information for Pawtucket that evening, we found Ken McGill's cell phone in there, which we do have. I have his cell phone because we've worked together for many, many years. But we didn't find the contact information for the chair of the board or any of the board members because perhaps we could reach them. So we just had to wait till the next morning until we could reach Ken. And once we did, he did bring us the sticks promptly. And I don't, if Ken can answer any questions about the emergency contact, about the board members' numbers, but we went off the database that we had, which they provide that information to us.
Okay, so if Mr. McGill can maybe clarify that for us.
Have you ever been to Pawtucket City Hall?
Yes.
You know it's a very big brick building.
Mhm.
And it gets very poor reception on a cell phone. I was at the Board of Canvases at 11:30 that night. I didn't receive a text or a phone call or anything. Why we don't have backup phone numbers? I think Miguel knows, like our back number at City Hall is 722-1637. I don't believe that was called. Dario Hernandez was working with Johanna all week. He wasn't called. So there were some backup, maybe not on that list, but I think you knew some backup numbers you could have called. Again, I think this whole thing was just probably a misunderstanding on both our parts.
Yeah, I think we tried to reach that EO that evening because he's been working closely with Johanna, and we weren't able to reach him. And I believe the staff called the City Hall, but as you know, City Hall, sometimes the numbers do shut down after a certain time. I mean, we made attempts to reach him, to reach whoever we could. It didn't happen. It's rare that it happens, but in this case, we were not able to reach them. And we did contact them immediately the first thing the following morning.
Anyone else? Oh, sorry.
Go ahead, Madam Chair.
No, I
asked
I
whatever
was,
questions I had.
no, I was looking to others that had something.
I guess I just wanted clarification because so you're mentioning that the USBs that were brought the next day, they were empty, and so 'cause I was trying to take notes. I was like, this sounds more confusing than I expected it to. So the two USBs that you brought in were empty, and so is that why I'm trying to figure out why that happened. And you mentioned the issue with the two machines in city, not in City Hall, the visitor center. I'm just trying to figure out how these two machines corroborated to the issue of we didn't have the USBs, or like, do we had two empty USBs? I'm trying to figure out how did this happen. I was trying to connect those
So
dots
each machine has two USB drives. One
Correct.
is a primary,
in the backup.
and then there's a backup.
Mhm.
The primary drive stores all the data during the day. And when that machine is closed and transmitted, it saves a copy of everything to the backup drive.
Mhm.
Because those machines weren't closed and transmitted on election on at 8 o'clock on election night, then they did not store anything to the backup drives yet. So we received them the following with the sticks that actually had the data on them still with the main drive, the primary drives, and we received those the following morning.
Mhm.
So that's why the backup sticks do not have anything, because they only store anything when there is an issue with the when
the main
it's
main.
actually closed and transmitted.
Yes, sir.
So Ken,
Yes,
how many members are there of the Board of Canvassers in Pawtucket?
3.
Do all three stay at election night at the Board of Canvassers?
They could be out helping to close down polls, but normally they would be at the Board of Canvassers.
So when you were there that night, were you accompanied by members of the Board of Canvassers?
Yes.
Did any of those receive telephone messages, emails, or anything of that
I
nature?
don't believe the Board of Elections tried because you didn't have numbers, which
No.
today I have with me 12 phone numbers as backup numbers that you can use in the future. So we shouldn't have this problem again.
Right.
So again, if you worked in City Hall, you would know you miss more than half your phone calls or your texts, because that building, let's face it, is very, very thick brick and was used as a fallout shelter. So most people don't get any phone calls or
Right.
anything.
But you do get email, though. You get email?
I don't know if you emailed.
Yeah.
I don't think we
Yeah,
emailed you.
no,
No,
no.
probably at that point we
Right.
would try to contact you by cell phone or landline.
I mean, everything resolved at the end, but we're just trying to make sure it doesn't happen again.
Absolutely.
That's the reason we asked you to come here, so that we don't have this problem in your town or any other town or city. So I'd like to ask Miguel, what do you recommend here?
Well, the first recommendation, I was going to recommend that we get the numbers for the boards, local boards, emergency contact, because we found that to be extremely helpful. Because as you know, we receive 95% of transmission of every precinct in the state, generally by 8:30. PM. So it only takes 30 minutes to get almost everything in. It's usually the next 3 hours that are painstaking because it's usually Prudence Island or some locations in Coventry or even some locations in Providence that always have trouble transmitting. In Cumberland, for example, at the monastery, the library, very difficult transmitting from there. And generally speaking, we have to wait for those sticks to be driven in here, either by a board of canvassers or by a police officer. And our goal is to have 100% of the sticks in here on election night, because there's nothing that bothers me more probably than seeing 99% on our website, and our staff can attest to that. But the emergency contact information again has come in very helpful for us when we need to reach the board of canvassers. When unfortunately, we are very proactive. There are 2 DS200s at every unit, at many locations, and we ask the boards of canvassers, make sure your wardens and moderators transmit both machines, because if they don't, that means we might have one machine that hasn't been transmitted, and if you've gone home, you're going to have to go back to City Hall and get us that drive and bring it to us manually, because we want to have 100% of the results in from the precincts there on election night. So that recommendation is that we do get that contact information, which we have at this point. And again, just to follow our recommendations in terms of making sure that everything before you close up your office, we ask them to check our website, make sure we're 100% reported, that there is nothing outstanding from your office before you leave.
Thank you.
So that would be my second recommendation to Pawtucket, just to ensure that our website is reading that everything is in, including early voting, to ensure that we do have everything.
Anything else? Do you have anything else? Mr.
No, I
McGowan?
think
Okay.
Miguel's covered it. and
Okay.
I think we
We'll improve, yep,
both understand what needs to be done in the
Okay.
future. And I've already started with the numbers, so, no, I got nothing else to add.
okay. Thank you. Thank you for being here.
And then, Madam Chair, I just have
Yes,
a
sir.
request, maybe at some point, either on our January or February meeting, most likely February, because January is probably going to be legislation. If we can maybe revisit our regulations, because I just think that now that we have all the electronics, I just don't think there's any reason why we shouldn't be able to publish all our results on election night.
Yep.
And I mean, that's got nothing to do with what happened in Pawtucket. It's just a pet peeve of mine, as I know the director is also bothered by that. So if maybe we could just revisit that at that point, I would be thrilled.
Absolutely. Sounds good.
Otherwise, thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Agenda item number 6, the board may vote to hear and decide a complaint filed by David Thornley, candidate for zoning inspector, Town of Exeter, alleging misconduct in the appointment of the successful candidate for that office. Counsel?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Will the parties please come up to the table and identify themselves?
Yeah, they're on.
Kenneth Sylvia for the Town of Exeter. David Thornley.
And Mr. Cilia, do you have representatives from the Board of Canvassers with you?
There are 2 members of the Board of Canvassers here today, yes.
Okay, and who are they? Why don't you just give us their names? Jet?
I don't,
My first name is Edward, my last name is Natalie, Nataly. I go by Ted.
Okay,
Nancy Lambert, Tom?
okay, thank you.
Thank you. We
So I can
starting
at
with
least
you?
frame the issue and then we can hear from the parties on their argument. On November 23, 2024, the Board of Canvassers convened a meeting to certify the results of the November 5 general election. For the office of zoning inspector, Harold G. Morgan received 1,889 votes. The appellant here today is Mr. Thornley. He received 1,660 votes. There were also approximately 19 write-in votes for that office. Mr. Morgan, the candidate with the most votes, predeceased the election by approximately 1 month, passing away on or about October 7. The board voted on November 23. I think we have what appears to be the minutes from that as Exhibit 1 from the town. They voted to certify the results of each of the offices in the town of Exeter. However, they did not certify a winner for zoning inspector, noting instead that Hal Morgan, who was the Republican, received that number of votes, and the independent, Mr. Thornley, received the 1660. Before the board is an appeal by Mr. Thornley seeking a determination that he is actually the successful candidate. Now, in my opinion, and we're going to hear from the parties, the governing statute is General Law 1715-38, which is up on the screen. And I'm having a little trouble reading it. Let's see, I might have a copy,
Yeah.
but. Oh, can you zoom in? Oh, great. Okay, so going near the end of that document. So if you look at near the very end of subparagraph A, part of the last sentence, and I'll read the whole thing once if you can just knock out that instruction on the side, I'll be able to read it. Okay.
I think she's zooming in more.
I see. Yep,
Oh, okay.
I can, yes.
I have this. Oh, I have I thought I had it
It's
printed.
also
Sorry.
Exhibit 10.
Go
to
ahead.
my,
Okay.
Great. Thank you.
So it's speaking near the end about a death of a nominee, and it says the person so named shall be the nominee of the party for the office. And if in case of the death of a nominee, time will permit, the Secretary of State shall place the name of the nominee upon the election ballot. When the withdrawal or death occurs after the third day after the last day for holding primaries, the Secretary of State shall not be required to remove from any computer ballot or mail ballot, which has already been printed, the name of any person who is no longer the nominee of a party for a particular office as provided in this section. And this is the operative provision, any votes cast in any election for that person shall not be counted. Now, the attorney for the town will be heard on this point, and he has constitutional arguments as well that we will hear. But I do want to note that one observation of the town is that this can't apply because it occurs in Chapter 15, which is your chapter on primaries. However, this provision kicks in, for lack of another term, after the nominations have occurred. It's actually to address those who have died as a nominee. So the primary process has already occurred, and it's addressing when a nominee, in this case, that would be Mr. Morgan, passes away. And as you can also see in that language, it does say votes cast in any election for that person shall not be counted. So the question would be whether or not, since the statute, in my opinion, is operative, the prevailing candidate would actually be the appellant here. So we should hear from both parties. Normally, we would hear from the appellant first, because you're the moving party. But I would like to just, if I could just get some housekeeping rules squared away. As far as the exhibits, Mr. Thornley, do you have any opposition to the introduction as full exhibits, those documents that Mr. Sylvia submitted with his memo?
All I have is the section 1.6 for the zoning inspector. And what the first paragraph states that the zoning inspector will be elected by the people.
Yep.
It's not appointed by the town council.
But as far as what Mr. Sylvia
No, I
attached,
don't- I don't
no
have-
opposition?
no.
So I think if I could just take a moment, just so there's a record in case there's any appeal, we should just mark these as full.
Yeah,
And
I think they go through, are they going through 14, Ray? 1 through 14?
And let's see, the first one marked, is it the minutes? Do you have that marked? So
I
that
do
would be the
notice-
table of exhibits. These will, unless there is any opposition, and doesn't appear there is, we'll mark each of the table of exhibits 1 through 14 as full. Okay. And I think we should hear from Mr. Thornley.
I'll move the documents as full exhibits before the board, 1 through 14, as provided in the brief filed by the town of Exeter. I'm assuming you want those all marked for the record, so
Yes.
I'll move them as full exhibits for the record.
Thank you.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Marked.
I think I have one question for Ray before we
Yes,
start.
please.
Yeah.
So Ray, just with regard to the statute, because I know that the argument is that it applies only to primary elections, but the portion of the statute, the beginning of the statute essentially allows for submission of a candidate by a local, by a party chair, by the party chair, is that
That's
correct?
correct.
Okay, so that's the portion of it that would apply pre-primary.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
And I
Mr.
know that we actually just had this statute before us, I think at the last or second to last meeting. So this is coming into
Oh,
play
that's right.
again.
Okay.
Okay.
Mr. Thornley?
Yeah,
And I think in addition to if you're going to be presenting anything other than argument, and I think you will be, any facts, I think we're going to swear you in just as a witness.
Okay. Miss, can you raise your right hand? Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you.
Okay, as
Go
you know,
ahead.
I ran for zoning inspector. Nominated by the people of Exeter, as Hal was nominated as a Republican, I was nominated as the independent, and we both ran unopposed in our party, so there really was no primary because of that. I really ran no campaign. I didn't put out any signs, I didn't do any soliciting, word of mouth through friends and family. So I think I did pretty good as far as votes go for not running a big campaign. And as you know, on October 7th, or thereabouts, he passed away. Shortly after that, I did reach out to Director Nunes to ask him how that affected the election. And he pretty much explained this to me. If he passed away, he becomes ineligible. So I figured, well, okay, I'm running unopposed, so I definitely don't have to do any soliciting. No representatives from the town at any time through this whole thing until I submitted a complaint to the town board of cannabis. Reached out to me at all. It was shortly after that the solicitor reached out to me, emailed me. Where was I going? I'm a little nervous.
That's all right.
Many people in town still don't even know that Hal passed away. Many people. Some people in town, through word of mouth, actually voted for Hal. For all people that did know he passed away, they voted for him for old time's sake, figuring I had already won. But to show respect for Hal, they voted for him. So some of those votes, it's hearsay. But I think if more people knew he had passed away, I think I would have won anyway. He passed away on the 7th. The memorial for Hal was held the Saturday after elections, which was kind of odd, I thought. And a friend, business owner in Exeter, on Saturday, he went to the memorial. And he reached out to me to congratulate me, telling me that I'd won. Again, this is hearsay because he's not here to testify to that. Congratulating me, bringing up some issues that he's having with his business already. I mean, I'm not even sworn in or anything, and he's reaching out to me to ask me what my opinion is on his issues. And I told him that, whatever, I have to be sworn. I can't do anything. I got to be sworn in. But that goes to show that even people in town, people that were at the memorial, didn't really know what was going on. You know, it was all up in the air. I've reached out to Mr. Director Nunes several times. He's kind of guided me through a lot of this, and I really appreciate that. When it comes to my filing of the complaint, I reached out to our board of canvassers because on his information, tell me, our board of canvassers has to reach their decision before we can go any further. Well, I reached out on the 10th, which is a Tuesday, when our board of canvassers meet. And they told me they hadn't come to a decision that they'd have to, work on it further. Well, in the meantime, I have a lot of friends that ran for positions in town. And I'm talking to them, and they're all being sworn in. So why haven't they made my decision yet? On Monday, the 16th, I reached out to the State Board of Canvassers again, and mentioning how I was going to have to file a complaint. And it wasn't Mr. Nunes that I spoke to at the time. It was a gentle lady that I spoke to. And she told me that I may have missed my deadline to file the complaint because the state certifies the town certifications on that Thursday, which would be the 19th. So I called our board of canvassers again on the 17th, and to find out what they knew. And still, they told me they had no information. So I explained to them what I learned about, the state certifying the town certifications, and that now I'll have to be filing my formal complaint. And I was told that, well, you know more about this than we do. And then later on, I find out that on the 23rd, I actually just found out yesterday that on the 23rd was when they had made the decision and certified Hal as the winner. And in our conversation on Friday, Ken had mentioned that they hadn't made any decisions on the position of zoning inspector. Well, on the 2nd, I believe they made 2. Karen Ellsworth is one of them. I don't know who the other gentleman is, but they made 2 deputy inspectors' positions permanent on the 2nd of December.
Okay, and then,
I have a question.
Yes.
Madam Chair.
Yes, sir.
Was Mr. Morgan the existing zoning inspector?
Yes, he was. He had been for almost 20 years, had ran unopposed for like 5 terms.
Okay, thank you.
Yes,
I have a
Commissioner.
question. The town has provided the minutes to certify the election on hearing, I guess the hearing was held on, or a meeting was held on November 23. I take it from your testimony, did you receive notice of
No,
Of that meeting?
I've received absolutely nothing from the town except for his first email on, it was actually last week, like last Tuesday, was the first email I
So
received from the town.
So the first time you learned about your election results was when? When did you first learn of the election result?
As far as the election, it's the 23rd, as far as the information about the 23rd, I did not learn about until, I believe it was yesterday when he sent out the emails.
Right, but the election was the 5th, so did you learn that you won, or at least received a certain number of votes?
Yeah, well, that I looked up myself.
Okay,
Mhm.
all right.
Yes,
Did you
yes.
notify at that point the Board of Canvassers in Exeter about that election?
No,
You made no inquiry to them,
no,
and they didn't notify you either.
correct.
So they had this, did they publish, do you know whether or not they published notice of that meeting on November 23rd to certify the election?
No.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Any further questions?
and
Or
before we
Mr.
hear from the
Thornley?
town, there was a
Yes.
motion to intervene filed by the town. To the extent that is necessary, my opinion would be that it should be allowed.
I'll move to allow
And I
it,
might
based on council's recommendation.
Second.
just, Okay, we can do that. Moved and seconded to allow it. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. I just, one clarifying, and I think I heard it correctly, but on November 23rd, the Board of Canvassers certified Hal Morgan as the zoning inspector, and Mr. Morgan is no longer with us. He's deceased, correct? So you have no zoning director right
There is
now?
currently no zoning inspector, nobody
No,
occupying that
it's-
office. I would say that the Board of Canvassers didn't certify him as the winner. They certified the vote totals. And you'll see on what is Exhibit 1 to my appendix, the actual minutes there. In bold is the winner for every race. There is no bolded candidate
Yeah.
for this race.
No, understood. Yeah, understood. But it's his
certified
name and his,
Right, he got
he
the most
has
votes.
the amount of votes. So you
Correct.
certified the votes that he got. Okay,
Correct.
thank you.
These minutes, are these the final visit minutes?
Yes.
That they don't reflect any motions and who made a motion, who voted in favor of the motion, but that's,
It does say that the certification was unanimous at the very
it
end.
says that, but there's no reference, for example, as to what motions were made. Was it just a motion to certify all elections? And I'm curious because what was the motion with respect to this particular election? It's just, there's no,
Sure.
there's no reference to a motion seconded or anything of that nature.
So let me ask this, was there any discussion at the board regarding that particular election?
I don't know the answer to that. I wasn't at the meeting.
Okay.
So alls I have as far as what the Board of Canvassers actually did is. what's
This
in
document?
what's in
So,
this document,
so is
correct.
Exhibit 1 that council just referenced, that I think that's the exhibit we're talking about, correct?
Right,
And that's the official record of the minutes
Yes.
from the Board of Canvassers?
correct.
There's nothing more than that?
Nothing
And
more
there's
than
no
I'm aware
recording
of.
of that proceeding, I take it?
I would be very surprised if there was.
Thank you.
And we do have two members of that
Yeah.
board, should you
Yeah.
wish to.
No, I would be interested in knowing what the discussion was
Yeah.
around this specific.
Would you like that now
Race.
before Mr. Sylvia goes with his argument or?
I'm
I
fine.
think it would,
with-
I think it
do you
would make
want that
sense to
first?
hear,
Yeah.
just so we have
Yeah.
all the facts set. So would the two representatives of the Exeter Board of Canvassers please come on forward?
Would you like me to relinquish my seat?
I think we're going to have to, we only have two mics there.
Unfortunately.
Thank you, sir.
Don't go far, though.
Yeah. And if you want, you could just slide over, Mr. Sylvia, and maybe throw a chair in for him. And we should swear
Swear
in the
them.
two witnesses.
That's what I was going to ask. Can you please both raise your right hand? Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Thank you.
And now that you're before us, formally, would you mind please giving us your names again?
Nancy Anderton. It's T-O-N.
My first name is Edward. My last name is Natal, N-A-T-A-L-Y.
Okay, thank you very much. Does the board have questions of the board members?
I have a
Just,
couple.
Was there any discussion on this particular race at the board meeting?
Bas-
You go.
Basically, I don't think I need this, but.
No, yeah.
Well, because it's
Oh, okay.
recording, yeah.
So basically what it was we had to wait till the Board of Elections certified the votes. That's why we met on the 23rd. And then all we were doing was certifying the number of votes that each person had.
So I guess my question would be, did you have any discussions about specific races at that point in time?
No,
We were prepared, we were told to be prepared to certify the election on the 19th. We were contacted by the Board of Elections and told, no, we couldn't do it, and it had to go to the Friday. We were there on Friday, and we still couldn't do it, and we only were notified to be able to certify who won the elections on the 23rd. We met on the 23rd. We discussed the whole thing. We did not discuss whether Mr. Thorne or Mr. Morgan won the election, just that we were doing what we were supposed to do, which was to verify all of that.
So you were basically verifying the totals that you were given?
Yes,
Correct.
yes.
Thank-
Then we turned around and we submitted it. All three of us signed the document that was submitted. We have one in our filing cabinet. We submitted one to the.
Thank you.
We were
Into the
also,
Secretary of State.
oh, well,
Yeah.
she's a more accurate one.
Could you tell us then why for every other race that you voted on that day, you highlighted the winners except for zoning inspector? How did it come to be that everything else was highlighted with respect to the winners except for that race?
Because technically, we have no right to decide who the winner in that race was.
Yep.
We were just declaring the amount of votes. We want to declare anyone was a winner of that race.
And why is that? Why did you come to that conclusion that you couldn't declare the surviving candidate?
It wasn't our job.
Did someone tell you someone else's job? That was somebody else's job?
I can't remember the answer to that. There's been so much going on about the whole thing back and forth. And we've been told to be very careful about what we say. In other words, we're not gonna go out and say, well, Mr. Morgan won and Mr. Gormley lost. All we try to stay with is who received the most votes.
I have another question.
Yes, sir.
Who were you told that by? You said we were told.
Probably by the state Board of Elections.
You were told by us?
I believe so, yeah.
I have a question regarding, have you seen this exhibit 1?
Is that the one that we
Your minutes, yeah.
submitted?
Well, it says it's your minutes. That's what it says. It's proposed to be
Yes,
your
we all
minutes.
signed it.
So, and were these presented to you at the meeting or after the meeting? How did this come to be?
At the meeting that we had,
Mhm.
we drew those up and submitted them.
You say, we say we, specifically who drafted this?
Yeah, Mary B., Ted, and I, we documented that at the meeting that we held on that day, and then we all signed.
Okay, what I'm getting at is who printed out this physical document?
I did,
Okay,
I typed it out.
you typed it out. Okay, and just to go back to what council said, on the other ones you typed out, you listed the other races, you listed the winners, so to speak, in bold, correct?
Right,
In this race, you did not list a winner in bold.
correct.
Why?
Because I don't know who was the winner of that race. I understand that Hal received the most votes.
Okay, so what I'm getting at is, so then the board itself took no position on who the winner or loser was.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Schultz, did you have
Just
something?
a couple of questions, just a few process questions. Did you have an agenda for that night?
Well, it was actually like 9:00 in the morning.
Okay. Did you have,
We just met because the Board of Elections had certified the votes that night about 5:30 or so.
so
So we just came in the very first thing in the morning.
so there was no agenda, I take it?
No, we were
Okay.
just there to certify.
And there was no notice of the meeting on that day?
Well, no, because they had just done it at 5:30.
I know, but from
that
your point of
night.
view, you didn't post a notice, we're gonna have a meeting
For the public.
that
yeah.
day, that morning, right?
No,
Right,
they-
okay.
because the time didn't really allow it.
Okay, so, you had the meeting the following day, and what was your, impression why you had to have a meeting that day, that Friday?
Because we had to certify the votes as soon as we got the certification that the Board of Elections had certified all the ballots.
Okay, it was on a Thursday that we were supposed to certify the election. We were contacted the board, and the board said, no, you can't do it because we have not certified it. We were gonna do it on Friday. We showed up on Friday again, and we were still told we couldn't do it. It got approved somewhere around 4 or 5 o'clock
It was like 5:30, I think.
on Friday afternoon. Okay. That's how we came in to meet. If
The-
we have an agenda, no, sir. Let's be honest. No. Okay.
But the first time you were supposed to meet, when you learned that you couldn't, was that posted as an agenda?
No, because we had to wait until the Board of Elections. They thought they would have all the results by Thursday, And they were pushing it back. So we didn't have agenda because we didn't know when we were going to meet.
So I don't enforce the Open Meetings Act. I mean, I think, as you may know, when a meeting that's supposed to be public and properly posted takes place without satisfying the Open Meetings Act, any votes are void. Now, I'm not in a position to make that declaration, but it does go to the question of what remedy we're going to fashion here, because if it is remanded to the local board, there may not be any vote that they have to reconsider. I'm not sure, because I don't see how you could take a vote as a public body without a publicly posted meeting. It's been a long time since that's been allowed in this state.
But we weren't taking a vote.
Were any votes taken at this meeting?
No, we were just, all we were doing is publishing the votes that we received.
Well, then, but you understand that when you sign a document as you did, you're reflecting a consensus that you affirmed the actions that the public body took at that time, right? Okay.
I'll just note that they did post a meeting for November 19th for a certification of an agenda indicated to certify the results, but they did not post a subsequent meeting.
Did you continue that meeting?
We didn't have it on the 19th
Okay.
because we couldn't.
All right. And like I said, I'm not here, I don't enforce the Open Meetings Act. I'm just wondering aloud, because we do have to talk about, in the event that the appellant prevails, what relief is provided to him. But Mr. Sylvia, do we have anything else of the board members?
I just have one more question.
I'm sorry.
We
I-
just posted we were coming here today.
Okay.
And that was informed, we were informed that we had to do that by the town clerk.
Okay.
I just want to get something straight over here. The town council, they had 10 people running for office, so they're running at large, aren't they not? Yeah, so they would be the top 5 vote getters would win, correct? Okay, I just want to understand that. Thank you.
Anything else? Okay.
Thank you both. Thank you very much. And Mr. Thornley, you can come back up to the table, and Mr. Sylvia, if you want to now present your argument to the board, you may.
Sure. So I think I'd like to start with 171538, since you brought that up. And there's a few problems, I think, with the application of this statute in this situation. The first is related to what the statute itself says. I don't believe that it by its own terms applies. And then there is a constitutional argument, which you alluded to earlier. But if you read the statute itself, it says that in the event of a death, a party may pick a new nominee and provide that information to the Secretary of State in order to essentially supplant the person that they had nominated or endorsed before. That did not happen. The Republican town committee did not pick another nominee. I confirmed with them that was not done. And because Mr. Morgan died something in the neighborhood of 27 days after, and this statute applies if it happens within 3 days after, by its own terms, it just doesn't apply. So any which way I think we cut it, it doesn't change the outcome. But even if this statute did apply, I don't think that it would matter, because the state constitution is very clear about how somebody wins an election for a town office in the state. And it says that we have plurality elections, and the winner has to get the most votes. And here, the person who got the most votes is Mr. Morgan. Now, obviously, he's not alive, so he's not going to be able to be sworn in. And both state law and the town's charter provide for what happens when there's a vacancy in an office. And in both of those legislative enactments, the town council is entitled to appoint somebody for the balance of the term. That's the rule that's been set out. But even beyond the sort of statutory argument, this is an issue that obviously doesn't come up very often, but it has come up before. And it's come up a number of times over the last 150 years. And every time that the issue has been reached by our Supreme Court, the court has said very clearly that because the person who got the most votes is ineligible does not mean that the next highest vote getter wins. And I think if you take the argument out to its sort of logical end, it really makes sense. If you imagine somebody running unopposed and every single person in the town votes for that person except for one write-in vote, the idea that what the will of the electorate really is for the one write-in candidate to win, I don't think that really passes the sniff test, so to speak. And this rule is not just the rule in Rhode Island, it's basically the rule everywhere in the country. Apparently there was a split after we broke off from England some years ago about what to do in the event of an ineligible candidate being elected. And the courts have decided that we're going to look to what the will of the voters were. And we're not going to selectively disenfranchise voters based on who they voted for, which is an argument that I didn't raise in my brief, but I think is similarly important. What we would really be doing if we were to say that anybody who voted for Hal Morgan, your votes just don't count, is we're picking and choosing which votes we're going to count based on who the candidate that was voted for was. And if I look at that from an equal protection sort of perspective and say that I don't think that that is appropriate to say that, well, because you picked a particular candidate, we're just going to throw your vote in the garbage. That doesn't make a lot of sense to me. And I think that it is problematic constitutionally, even separate from, I think, a variety of other arguments that exist about this, to do that. Now, as far as what could have happened if Mr. Thornley had gotten maybe some different information from the Board of Elections about what the effect of this all was, I don't believe that it's appropriate for the board to consider how the voters might have reacted to different facts. I'm certain that not everybody in town knew that Mr. Morgan had passed away. I'm sure that some did. I know for certain that some voted for him in spite of that because they knew that the town council would get to appoint somebody if he were to prevail. But I think trying to look past somebody's vote to the reason why they cast their vote is something that is just not remotely within the purview of the Board of Elections or really any body to be able to try to say that, we're going to look past the clear expression of your vote, try to figure out why you did it. And if we think that the facts could have been different, then we're just going to, kind of tinker around with what the vote is. That seems like a very dangerous thing for the Board of Elections to even consider doing.
But Mr. Sylvia, how do you advance that argument in light of that last sentence of subparagraph A, which tells this board directly from the General Assembly what to do when the nominee passes away? And Mr. Morgan was the nominee, right? He was the nominee of the Republican Party?
He was the endorsed candidate. There was no primary, so I don't know if nominee is really the correct word to use for it. But what the statute says is that if the Republican Party were to have advanced another candidate, then you get to that last sentence. I don't think you get there if no other candidate has been put forward. It doesn't say that under all circumstances, if a candidate dies, you disregard votes cast for them. And I think that would be problematic if it did say that. I think the statute would be unconstitutional.
But why? I mean, the General Assembly has said clearly that any votes cast in any election for the person who has died shall not be counted. What about our Constitution would be in conflict with that provision?
Article 4, Section 2 of our state constitution, that I'm not going to quote the language, but it says that the person who gets the greatest number of votes shall be declared elected. And what would happen in that event, if you were to take in this situation and disregard all the votes cast for the person who got the largest number of votes, then the person who got the greatest number of votes would not be declared elected. Somebody who did not get the most votes would be declared elected. I think it directly conflicts with the language of the statute. But even before you get there, the statute itself doesn't apply because it says that the party may file with the appropriate authority the name of its nominee.
But it doesn't have to.
Right.
And if they don't, and the deceased remains on that ballot, there is no longer any confusion in this state as to what happens next. And that's made clear in that last part of that statutory provision. Now, the cases you cited, what was the most recent case you cited?
The most recent one on this looks to have been 1931.
Okay, so that's a good 15, 16 years before this law was passed. This law was passed in 1947, amended a number of times, but it seems, I mean,
I will say that in the late 60s, another case got to this. It didn't actually address the issue,
yeah.
but there was a dissent in that case that discussed how this had been the law.
But
Did
those
not
cases
consider
you cited, they don't even address this particular issue. They talk about the disqualification of a living candidate, right?
Well, it talks about a candidate being ineligible. I don't think it matters why the candidate is ineligible.
Well, it
And the
does
rule
now.
as it- well, the rule as it's been applied everywhere else similarly treats a dead candidate and an ineligible candidate as ineligible. They're the same, essentially the same thing. Now, I read this statute differently than it would seem that you do. And if ultimately this is something that the Supreme Court has to decide, then, so be it. But I don't believe that this statute, as it exists, says that a candidate, by virtue of dying before an election, has their votes selectively disqualified. I don't believe that it says that. I just don't think the words literally say it. And even if it did, I don't think that the Constitution permits such an interpretation.
Well, the Constitution speaks to, and I'll read it from Article 4, Section 2 in its entirety. In all elections held by the people for state, city, town, ward, or district officers, the person or candidate receiving the largest number of votes cast shall be declared elected. Now, you would agree that if someone who got the most votes was ineligible to hold that office, he would not be declared elected, right?
I believe that there would be a failure to elect under longstanding Rhode Island law. And
And
the
that-
entirety of the election is essentially nullified.
So, and likewise for the death of a candidate, you don't see this, given that it's silent, you want us to read into that, but it doesn't address issues of disqualification, illegal conduct, death. I mean, it's just that constitutional provision is silent on that, right?
Well, it says that whoever gets the most votes has to be declared elected. And
But a person
the
who dies is not even a person any longer, right?
I would not agree with that. And I think that if you look at the definition of a person as it's been commonly used, both in just sort of standard usage as well as in legal context, I don't believe that there is a distinction drawn between a person and a living person or a dead person. No.
So, can I ask a question? So counsel, if everyone in the town voted for Joe Biden
Mhm.
or Donald Trump for this race, they wrote it in.
Mhm.
And instead of having 1,800 votes for a dead person, you had 1,800 votes for either one of the presidential candidates, what would have happened?
The exact same thing would have happened because neither Donald Trump nor Joe Biden are residents of the town of Exeter. They would be ineligible for the office and there would be a failure to elect. The exact same outcome.
And that would be even if it was a write-in candidate.
Yep.
So even though that person may not even, if somebody put in Donald Duck,
I
Maybe
would
that
imagine
would not-
Donald Duck is not taking the job.
okay, all right.
And
I
then, and
believe-
so then your remedy is if there's no election,
Uh-huh.
what's your suggested remedy?
So both state statute and the town's charter provide for what exactly to do in the event of a
For
vacancy.
the town council to appoint.
The town council gets to appoint for the balance of of this term, and then it would be elected.
And
you know,
when
again.
is the term end?
2 years from when the last election was. It's a 2-year term.
Thank you.
I have a question, okay? I'm curious to say that if the person who died before the election is going to be declared the winner, okay? That's your position, okay? As I understand?
Not quite. I
Okay.
think technically I'm saying that nobody can be declared the winner.
So you have a town council here with 10 members. Top 5 vote getters win. So say the top vote getter died, okay, before the election, just like in this particular case. Now you only have 4 people who are able to take the oath because the 5th person
Mhm.
cannot do that due to death. What would the town's position be with respect to candidate number 6, who got the 6th largest number of votes? Would that person be declared a winner?
So that's a very interesting situation because the charter actually accounts exactly for that. And in the event of the town council, if there's one position becomes vacant, the next highest vote getter by charter is automatically given that position. So it's provided for there for that one role, but it is treated differently for the other elected positions under the town charter, as well as elected positions generally under state law.
Does the town charter have any provisions with respect to this particular case where there's just 2 candidates running?
It does. So I'm sure I can find the provision here in a second. But basically, any elected office in the town, except for the town council, in the event of a vacancy for any reason, the town council gets to appoint a successor for the remainder of the unexpired term. And that's true as well. There's also a state statute on that exact point.
And you would agree with me that a state statute supersedes town ordinances and town charters?
I would agree that it supersedes town ordinances. It does not supersede the town charter.
Well, the statute of it indicates who would win. So that you would cast out or not count the votes of a person who died after the election, or who died before the election. Wouldn't that statute supersede a town ordinance and a town charter?
So
But that's
certainly-
dealing with the election of officials, and the state has a right to determine who can be an official and elected in a town or a city or state.
The state has some authority on that. The town does as well. A state statute certainly supersedes the town ordinance. There's no question about that. The town charter is one, it's ratified by the General Assembly and has the same force and effect as a statute. So when you're comparing a state statute and a town charter, the question really comes down to specificity and the circumstances. So it sort of depends, as lawyers love to say. Now, if there was a statute that said, point blank, as perhaps it would seem that your council thinks that this one does, that a dead person is simply their votes don't count, then I haven't considered whether that would be priority to or secondary to the charter. It's not an issue that I've really investigated, so I don't have a strong opinion on at this point. But it would, that would be, I think, a different circumstance than what we have.
Right. All the cases that you cited here were decided before the statute was enacted. In fact, the Corliss case was decided in 1876. The statute was amended 15 times after that case. And the Dupree case, which was decided in 1931, the statute was amended 14 times after that decision. And in the Sanders case, which was decided in 1918, the statute was amended another 14 times after that. So at least there was 15 times the statute was amended since the first case. So I would assume that this is the will of the General Assembly as to who would win, whose votes would be counted when a person is running against a deceased individual. Okay, that's after the election, because the last sentence says votes cast in the election of that person shall not be counted. I mean, I think that's the will of the General Assembly, that you're not going to count the vote of Mr. Morgan. Unfortunately, he died, but that's the way it is. That's according to the statute. I don't see how your arguments will counter this particular statutory reference.
Well, I'm far be it for me to, I can see when, I obviously haven't convinced you. I don't agree with that interpretation. I think that the rest of the statute disqualifies itself from this set of facts. And I still believe that the constitutional provision also is problematic with that interpretation of the statute. And that's separate from what I think is an equal protection problem and a due process problem, as far as disqualifying otherwise legal votes based on the candidate that the voters selected. Because that's really what we're talking about. And that to me seems very problematic separately from this. And that's not an issue that I've discussed in the briefs, but I think that's a separate problem for this as well.
Let me ask this question. It might be a comment because you might not be able to answer it because you're not the head of the Republican Party. But as it says, you know, it was a month before they had the ability to appoint another candidate from their party, but chose not to do so and rather to leave someone who is deceased on the ballot. Correct?
Correct.
Do you have any insight as to why that was? Because
I-
there
well-
was certainly ample time to do that, right? And that would have to come from the state committee or designee, if I'm trying to read that as best I can,
So
to the Secretary of State's office and then to, right?
Well, there may have been time to have a local political party meet and make that determination, but there wouldn't be time to change the ballot. The ballot was already, you
Got
have
it.
that 45-day rule
Yep.
for so from November 5, going back 45 days would be, it would
Okay,
be before that. So
Got
those
it.
ballots had to be printed and sent out to
it.
overseas voters
right,
by
okay.
that time.
I was just confused on that, but I mean, because the fact remains for me in looking at this is the votes don't count,
Yeah.
they don't count. But I was just thinking if there was an opportunity for a person who is alive and well to be on the ballot to, be running against the independent candidate, Mr. Thornley, I just was confused as
Mhm.
to why that action wouldn't be taken. But thank you for clarifying.
Madam Chair, just getting back to the reference from Commissioner Scholes and our council. If the statute says the votes shall not be counted, then there are no 1,800 votes if they're not to be counted. So I would look at that as being directly in line with the Constitution when the Constitution talks about plurality. Because if we're talking about plurality, we're only talking about votes that count. We're not talking about votes that don't count.
Mm.
So I think the commissioner's point and obviously our council's point are both well taken. If the votes don't count, they don't count. And the specific language of the statute says shall not be counted, as the commissioner already referenced. So, I mean, I'm comfortable with the position that's been taken by council and also Commissioner Scholes.
Okay.
Anything else?
I think that's all.
Thank you. The board wish to take an action
Well,
or say
let me ask,
more?
let me
Yes,
ask again,
please.
let me ask council.
Please.
So Ray, are you suggesting that we have the ability to order the Board of Canvassers to convene a meeting? I won't say reconvene because we may have some problems with reconvening a meeting that wasn't posted, but we have the ability to order the board to convene and certify Mr. Thornley as the winning candidate in the election.
To exactly right, but to certify the winner for the position of zoning inspector after following 17-15-38 and excluding the votes for the deceased candidate. So that would leave Mr. Thornley.
Okay, so I would be willing to make that motion as stated by council.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion from the board? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? The ayes have it.
Thank you.
Oh, and I mean, I would suggest the meeting be 48 hours from this decision.
Yeah, at
That's just a
least.
suggestion.
Yeah. I will write up a decision and order for the board. It'll be signed by the chair and circulated. Yes.
Thank you. Okay, the board may vote to convene an executive session regarding investigative proceedings into alleged election-related misconduct pursuant to Rhode Island General Laws 42-46-5, subsection A, subsection 4. Do I have a motion?
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Ayes have it. We will convene to executive session at 3:21 PM. minutes and resume, seal the minutes of executive session and resume open session. Can I get a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. And do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Moved and seconded. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? We are adjourned at 4 p.m. on the dot.
Try to second it as soon as possible.